UFC 325 is came and gone, and Alexander Volkanovski is still the champion of the world. Beniot Saint Denis is now on a 4-fight win streak. Mauricio Ruffy's back on track. And Quill and Salkilld is one hell of a fighter. We're going to walk through all the matchups that need to be made post-UFC 324. I've got faces hidden around the screen. I will slowly release them as we talk down the list, but it all starts with the champ, Alexander Volkanovski, beating Diego Lopes for the second time and even more decisively. This time, at least on the judges' scorecards. Now, the first fight, I'll say it had more back and forth action. It was a little more tit for tat. This was a masterclass by Alexander Volkanovski. Diego Lopes had a couple moments, a nice knockdown, but it never really felt like he was going to get this thing done. I've heard some disagreements with the scorecards. We had two 49-46s and one 50-45. I got no problem with any of them. When I was talking post-fight with Cody, I said probably 49-46, just giving Diego a round, but I didn't know which round to give him because Alexander Volkanovski, start to finish, looked like the champ, a step ahead. We said this before, and I'm saying it after. This guy's the best in the world. The best in the world. And that's why this next matchup is interesting. A fight that just got made right after UFC 325 was Lerone Murphy versus Movsar Evloev. And that seems like the obvious choice. I don't think anybody's surprised by this one. The winner of that fight should be next. Should be next. I know John Silva's making a play. Yeah, sure. But this is the rightful guys. I think both these men are on 9-fight win streaks. Lerone Murphy is coming off of a spinning back elbow of Aaron Pico. They probably should have been in this spot because Diego Lopes didn't really give us anything to get excited about. All due respect, love Diego Lopes, and I hope that he can rebuild from this, but it just seems like when Alexander Volkanovski's sitting there, he's not going to get over. So it seems like the right fight. Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy going down in London. I believe this is mid-March, if I'm not mistaken, in a pretty solid card. There's some interesting fights on that card. We'll kind of talk about a couple of them as we walk through this list. There's a nice heavyweight fight on that too. But excited. And I'm kind of hoping Lerone Murphy gets this one done. I don't know about you. I like Movsar, but just stylistically, Movsar as a champ seems like kind of a bummer. I saw a stat earlier that was like he's been scheduled for 22 UFC fights. 11 of them have been canceled. 5 were his fault. Granted, not all of them are his fault. But we haven't seen Movsar Evloev since Aljamain Sterling. If you remember that fight, whenever that was, that felt like a year ago. And granted, he's had some scraps. Movsar is not indestructible. The fight with Diego Lopes, of course, a classic. That was on a Diego Lopes debut. The fight with Arnold Allen was a scrap as well. So I'm not counting out the fact that Alexander Volkanovski couldn't beat Movsar Evloev. I'm not even counting out the fact that Lerone Murphy may beat Movsar Evloev. But still, maybe I'm biased. I'm hoping Lerone Murphy gets that one done. I'm sure we'll talk about that more when the time comes. Things might change. I might fall in love with Movsar. I might watch a couple highlight tapes. I'm known to do that and go, motherfucker, I might as well. Diego Lopes, on the other hand, is a hard guy. Let's look at the rankings real quick. It hasn't been adjusted since the fights came out, if I'm not mistaken. But we're looking at Diego Lopes currently at 2. I think this is going to get adjusted, just to be clear. Diego Lopes is currently at 2. I know last week my matchmaking was we're going to match up Aljamain Sterling and Aljamain Sterling and Yusuf Zalal, Jean Silva, and Yair Rodriguez. I still feel pretty comfortable about that. I wouldn't hate the Diego Lopes Yair Rodriguez matchup. Seems like a good time to do it. I know they had that back and forth at the press conference. I don't hate that matchup at all. I really don't. But then it's like, what do you do with Jean Silva? You give him the loser of a Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy fight? You could do that, 100%. You could definitely do that. But also, like, Yair needs a fight. How long are we going to wait for Yair to get back in the octagon? I don't know where the fuck that guy's been. What was the last Yair Rodriguez fight? Patricio Pitbull? I think that was like UFC 300. I don't even know when that was. Feels like forever ago. Dude's got no momentum. I'd like to see Yair back in the cage because Yair is a fun striker. I think that's an interesting matchup with Jean Silva. The height difference should be pretty palpable there. Got to be at least 5 or 6 inches. For me, Diego Lopes, I think we take you back. An exciting fight, a fresh matchup. You keep those matchups as are. Eustace Law, Aljamain Sterling, Yair Rodriguez, and Jean Silva. And we get the guy in with Arnold Allen. Oh, Arnie boy. Coming off of a loss to Jean Silva. But a scrapper nonetheless. I just think this would be a fucking banger. Diego Lopes and Arnold Allen going at it. We've seen Arnold Allen go toe-to-toe with Movsar Evloev, shuck some takedowns before, so he's not completely useless on the ground. First of all, I'm happy that Diego at least shot a couple times in this fight, at least tried it. I know it didn't go his way. Alexander Volkanovski jumping the guillotine too. That would have been absolutely fucking nuts. But I'm surprised that wasn't more a part of the game plan. Or maybe I'm just surprised at how strong Volkanovski is that Diego Lopes couldn't get him on the ground or do anything of any sort of staying power when it came to the wrestling or came to the grappling, because you would think that that would be the perceived advantage going into that Alexander Volkanovski fight. Didn't seem to be the case. I think you try it again. You go back. You go with Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen currently is sitting at, he's ranked 7 right now. He's coming off a loss himself. Gets one of these guys back on the right track. I know it sucks for the other guy. If you're Arnold Allen, you now lose 2 straight. If you're Diego Lopes, same thing. But I think both of these guys are going to be floating around the top of this division for a long time. I don't think either of them are actually out. I'm not counting Diego Lopes. You know, how long is Alexander Volkanovski going to be here? I'm not counting out Diego Lopes as a championship fighter, nor am I counting out Arnold Allen. And if Movsar Evloev ends up getting the belt, Diego might be on a fast track right back into it, because that first fight was so incredible. On the debut, that first fight was great. Now Beniot Saint Denis. I don't know. I mean, on a streak. My boy is streaking right now. We went Kyle Prepelec, Mauricio Ruffy, and then you follow that up with a knockout of Beneil Dariush, and then you go in here with Dan Hooker. First round wasn't going his way, taking teeps to the body. I thought Benoit was fucked. I thought he was fucked, but just kept pushing, finally got him to the ground, and then started raining down on Dan Hooker. Raining down elbows, punches, and that's all she wrote. Beniot Saint Denis, certified fucking tough guy. As if we didn't know this guy's a torturer and terrorist as a side gig. And now he comes in here into the UFC, and he's put together 4 in a row. And you got to reward 4 in a row. I mean, if we're looking at Beniot Saint Denis here in the rankings, we're talking about a guy that's, again, hasn't been adjusted, but we're talking about a guy that, that's the pound for pound list. Let's get into the lightweights. We're talking about a guy in Beniot Saint Denis that's 8. Dan Hooker was 6, just playing the game that they swap. There's not a lot ahead of him. And he called out post-fight. He called out he wants either the BMF belt or the title. He's not getting the title. And BMF is a weird one, because Beniot Saint Denis theoretically could be in that category, but I think that's really reserved for like long-time UFC vets. I mean, you think about the guys that have fought for it. It's been Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal. Then you go into Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and then you go into Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. Like, it's almost like you got to be a cult favorite to fight for that belt. And unfortunately for Beniot Saint Denis, I don't think he's quite there yet. So I can't imagine him actually fighting for that BMF belt. The one that I'm looking at is, in fact, the loser of that BMF belt, though. So whoever loses between Charles and Max, I think would be a great matchup with Beniot Saint Denis. And truth be told, I think Benoit is going to have tough sledding when we get up into the top of this rankings. I mean, let's look back at it. First of all, he was running at Dan Hooker with his head down. I think some other people, Ilia Topuria especially, would fucking knock his head off. Respectfully, again, certified tough guy. But there was a point in the fight where he was just running. He was just running at Dan Hooker with his fucking head down. So I think a Max Holloway would piece him up. Charles Oliveira would be a very interesting matchup. The only other guy that's kind of available is like an Arman Sarukian, which I don't hate that matchup. I think Arman gets over him relatively easily, though. I mean, we just saw, granted, Benoit's on a streak right now, but we saw Renato Moicano absolutely dominate Benoit on the ground, and that seems to be, you know, where he took advantage of Dan Hooker, where he took advantage of a guy like Mauricio Ruffy. We saw what Arman Tsarukyan did to Dan Hooker. MMA math doesn't always work, but I don't really, like, for Arman Tsarukyan, I'm looking at the winner of that BMF belt. It sucks that he's not fighting for a title. That's what I actually want for Arman Tsarukyan. I actually want him to be fighting Ilia Topuria next. But because we have Justin Gaethje there, I think you do a matchup with Charles or Max, whoever wins that BMF belt. That goes to Arman Tsarukyan. The loser goes to Beniot Saint Denis. And all is well in that world. But I think Benoit's going to have tough sledding when we get into the top of this division. Max, Charles, Arman, Ilia. Maybe I'm wrong, but the way that he was running at Dan Hooker, I don't think I am. But a fun fighter nonetheless, and man, I didn't think he was going to get over Dan Hooker, truth be told, in the teeps, especially in the first round. It was looking that way, and he did it. So props to Benoit Saint Denis. Let's see how he hangs with the big dogs at the top of the division. Another guy who impressed, coming off a loss to one Benoit Saint Denis, was Mauricio Ruffy taking on Rafael Fiziev. And back to the feet, and this motherfucker stays money. Mauricio Ruffy is that fucking guy as long as you're not wrestling. And if you watched my video last week, things are changing. I've got some change-ups to make just with the way this lightweight division is played out. I mean, we got, of course, Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett last week. Then we got Benoit Saint Denis, Mauricio Ruffy, Rafael Fiziev. Like, we got a lot of lightweight action. Dan Hooker this week. For Mauricio Ruffy, I'm going to go ahead and slide Dan Hooker in. Now, I had this matchup for Paddy Pimblett last week. I had the Dan Hooker-Paddy Pimblett matchup last week because of the perceived beef, and I said win or lose for Dan Hooker didn't matter. Might as well make the matchup. And you know how things can change. This is definitely not set in stone by any means, but the division kind of needs fleshed out. And it's hard to keep, like, if we match up Dan Hooker and Paddy Pimblett right now, 5 and 6, like, who do you match up Benoit with? Again, who do you match up, like, it all makes sense. Let me get back to this because I need to move this next one in. For Paddy Pimblett, I'm moving him in with Rafael Fiziev. Paddy Pimblett, Rafael Fiziev. First of all, I think that would be a pretty fucking good fight. You assume Paddy Pimblett's got the perceived advantage on the ground. We saw him not wrestle with Justin Gaethje. I hope he doesn't take that game plan again with Rafael Fiziev. But it also leaves him with a credible fight here. Like, Rafael Fiziev is still a tough guy at 155 because we're looking at the rankings. Like, if we gave you like a Paddy Pimblett versus Renato Moicano, I don't hate that fight, but old as shit. Or a Beneil Dariush, he already beat Michael Chandler. Then we're getting into the Manuel Torres, Mauricio Ruffy, Farasiam territory. Like, where do you go with Paddy Pimblett? If it's not Dan Hooker, you could do Mateusz Gamrot, but that's not like... If Paddy Pimblett and Mateusz Gamrot got announced, stylistically it's fun, but like from a fanfare perspective, it's not all that fun. So I didn't love that matchup. That's why I ended up pivoting Dan Hooker into Mauricio Ruffy, because, again, if we're looking at Mauricio Ruffy, I don't want him to knock out one of these old guys. I don't want him with Michael Chandler or Beneil Dariush. Well, he already knocked out Beneil Dariush. No, sorry, Benoit did. I don't want him with the Beneil Dariush or Renato Moicano. So then you are looking at, again, I don't know, Mateusz Gamrot, all due respect, is throwing this fucking thing off because I was really just avoiding him because all these guys are so exciting and he's not as much. He's also coming off of a loss. So for Mateusz Gamrot, you assume he's going to be fighting backwards. I don't even hate a him and Renato Moicano or him and a Benny Dariush. More interesting matchups for me than I think like a Paddy Pimblett or a Mauricio Ruffy or a Rafael Fiziev would be. But I like these. Like Mauricio Ruffy, Dan Hooker would be a fucking banger. It also allows Dan to get back on the feet. He's gone back-to-back wrestlers. Mauricio Ruffy's not going to wrestle you. Whether you can keep your chin in check, that's a different question. I mean, he's got some real power, and he's so fucking creative with his striking. But I do think Dan's got a chance in that. I mean, he's as tough as they come. This guy's been in wars with the likes of Justin Gaethje, of Dustin Poirier. So Mauricio Ruffy is just another notch on the belt for Dan Hooker. I don't think he'd shy from that challenge. And Rafael Fiziev, Paddy Pimblett, again, it keeps Paddy Pimblett in a competitive fight. A guy that people respect in the division, like Rafael Fiziev, without... Oops. Sorry, I fucked that up. Without taking too big of a step back, because you could just go old man against Paddy Pimblett again, and I think that would be kind of a bummer, or Mateusz Gamrot, who's not all that fun. But the lightweight is looking fun. I mean, we're looking at this chart right now, and we got a lot of new faces walking up the lightweight rankings, with the likes of Beniot Saint Denis and Mauricio Ruffy. You still got guys like Ignacio Bahamondes on the outside looking in. Quill and Salkilld, we'll get to him later. Esteban Ribovics. There's a lot of good fighters on the back end of the lightweight rankings that should be making their case in 2026. So love to see how that plays out. Thaleson Teixeira and Tai Tuivasa. How about these two heavyweights? Just gas the fuck out. Come round 2, come round 3. It's a weird spot because the heavyweight division is so thin that, like, Tai Tuivasa hadn't won a fight in 5 years, or since 2022, 4 years, 3 years, whatever the fuck it was, and he was still ranked number 12. He's on a 5-fight skid, still ranked number 12, and Thaleson Teixeira was number 15. The guy is 1-1 in the UFC. He's ranked number 15. That's just the state of the heavyweight division right now. Now for Thaleson Teixeira, interesting spot, because it's like you beat Tai Tuivasa, but he's also on a massive skid, and you didn't look that great. It's not like you go out there and you go, oh shit, Thaleson Teixeira could really, take on. He's ready for the Cyril Gans, the Tom Aspinalls of the world. He's ready for the Waldo Cortez Acostas, the Curtis Blades. I don't feel like that yet, but you also can't really go backwards. You just won. You're now in the rankings in the heavyweight division. Just imagine he swaps places with Ty here. He's going to be 12. Ahead of him, you got Shamil Giziev, Derek Lewis coming off of a loss. He already lost to Derek Lewis as well. That was his sole loss in the UFC. Ante D'Elia and Sergey Spivak are fighting here coming up soon. And that's actually the route I'm going to go. Win or lose here. I think Sergey Spivak is actually a pretty interesting matchup for Thaleson Teixeira. Both big, tall guys, similar body type. They both can grapple. I think that would just be an interesting matchup, and that'll kind of let us know where Thaleson Teixeira actually is. Obviously, the gas tank's got to get figured out. I know you're just kind of in a slugfest with Tai Tuivasa, and shit like that can happen at heavyweight. But Sergey Spivak he's held his spot in the heavyweight division for a reason, because he beats up-and-comers. Loses to guys like the Waldo Cortez Acostas, like the Sergey Pavloviches of the world. But he seems to get over some of the young guys that just aren't quite ready. I think it'd be a real test of where Thaleson Teixeira is actually at. And also, if he wins, you're kind of helping to move on from some of the older guys in the division, like a Sergey Spivak. And now the top of the division will just be ready to go heavyweights, guys that you could actually make a claim deserve to be at the top of the division. Sergey Spivak, respect to him, he's too far out. He's lost to too many of the guys ahead of him to actually make any sort of claim, at least for the time being, at a belt. So I think that'd be an interesting matchup, and I go win or lose against Ante D'Elia, who's coming off of that. Remember, he got that eye poke on Waldo Cortez Acosta, and then he basically KO'd Waldo, and then eye poked him, and then got KO'd. So interesting spot. We'll see how he fares with Sergey Spivak. He's another guy that, like I said, Sergey's a tough out. He's what we call a certified tough out. So we'll see how that thing plays out. The other fight that I considered for this was another interesting fight that got made on the England card. At least I found it interesting. Mick Parkin and Mario Pinto. Mario Pinto, a young guy in the UFC. I believe he's either 1-0 or 2-0, and then he's got a win on a contender series. But looking pretty good. Mick Parkin got set back his last time out. I think that could also be another matchup you look at for who's next for a guy like Thaleson Teixeira. But enough on him. Tai Tuivasa, The question with Tai Tuivasa is how much do you want it? How bad do you still want to be here? The thing is, I still think there's fights for Tai Tuivasa. You're in a heavyweight division that's slim, and you got guys. And in the world of Tai Tuivasa, does it really matter if he wins or loses? Obviously, you want him to win, but he's a fun fighter. He brings the energy. Sydney was all the way on Tai Tuivasa. They're having a good time. So let's just fuck around with Tai Tuivasa and make a fun fight. And this is a rematch, but one that I think would be a nice addition, a fun addition, because we know one guy says that he's going to be on the White House card. Trump loves him, calls him after the fight. He was on the phone with him. He knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, said, I had to knock this Russian motherfucker out because of Trump. So we assume one Derek Lewis is going to be on the White House card. Derek Lewis coming off of a KO loss to Waldo Cortez Acosta. You need to match him up with somebody. I can't think of anybody better than Tai Tuivasa. A rematch, I know. Tai Tuivasa got the best of him the first time, but a close one at that. Feels like a little bit of a banger, kind of a layup fight right here. And both of these guys are in the same spot. Win one, lose one. In Ty's case, lose a lot. Derek Lewis more the win one, lose one guy. But Ty does have the head-to-head win. And when we're just thinking about, like, who else would you match up Derek Lewis with? Just assuming that he actually will be on the White House card, you going to give him a fucking Marcin Tybura? You going to run it back with Sergey Pavlovich, who knocked him out in 18 seconds? Curtis Blades could be an interesting one. I don't hate that, actually. But yeah, I think that would be a good one. For the White House card, we're bringing entertainment. That would be an entertaining fight. Now, the young buck, Quill Salkilld. How about this guy? Takes on Jamie Mullarkey. And the thing that I'm most impressed with is a lot of times when you got young up-and-comers, especially lengthy guys like Quill Salkilld, they're not comfortable on the ground. Well, that's not a problem for this guy. Threw around Jamie Mullarkey. I called the sub, and God, did I get blessed with it. Got the sub against Jamie Mullarkey, and he's shown a level of skill that you don't often see. It is the well-roundedness of a guy like Quill Salkilld that I'm finding so impressive right now. Obviously, he's got the head kick knockout of Nasrat Haqparast. He got the 19-second knockout of the Indian guy in his debut. He had a 5-round, basically wrestling warfare with a little Russian fucker, and now he's got a sub of Jamie Mullarkey. He called top 15. He called for top 15. Let's go back to the lightweight division here. There wasn't anybody I loved when matching up him in the top 15, so I'm going just a hair outside. But, like, again, you can't go too far up. I think you can't go past 9. Realistically, I could see a Hanato, a Benil, a Michael Chandler, a Manuel Torres fight I wouldn't hate. Mauricio Ruffy, I think, is going to swap with Fiziev. You could even do a Fiziev fight. I don't hate that. A Farasiam. But the thing you got to do with lightweight right now, in my opinion, is you got to try to move on from some of the old guys. And I think that's what they're going to use a lot of these guys to do, like the Manuel Torres, the Farasiams, the guys that don't necessarily have the name power yet at the back end of this top 15 to take on like a Hanato Moicano, people like that, so we can get that fresh blood starting to move in. So I'm actually going to put Quill Salkilld right on the outside, but a guy that was fighting in the top 15 of the lightweight division for a long time, just made his return back to the sport. If I'm Jalen Turner, I don't fucking love this, but that is who I made it for. Jalen Turner retired at one point after losing to Ignacio Bahamondes, came back, beat Edson Barbosa. Oh, I got to bring it back here. Jalen Turner, I told you, but I slid Jalen Turner right in there for you. And I think that gives Quill Salkilld that credibility while also letting that lightweight division kind of work itself out so we can start getting some fun matchups in there. I told you about all the guys with the fun, like the Esteban Ribovics, the Ignacio Bahamondes, the guys that are on the come up in the lightweight division. I think we're going to use some of those guys to clear out the back end. And unfortunately for Jalen Turner, in this case, I know he's not ranked in the top 15 right now, but I do kind of see him in that same vein, a guy that has been holding down the lightweight division for a long time, and a very skilled fighter. Honestly, a very interesting matchup. A guy that you can never count out. The elbows, the hands of Jalen Turner. He's not a fish out of water on the ground, but if Quill and Salkilld can get over him, that makes me feel like he's war ready for any of these guys, any of the guys in that top 15, or at least 7 down at this point. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's my matchmaking for UFC 325. What a card it was. And yeah, if you watch this far, I really appreciate you. Like, subscribe, peace, love, and we'll see you on the flip.